Good morning. I'm Jonathan, the Assistant Law Librarian, and this is going to be the Lexis class, Pro Se Basics. This week we're talking about Lexis Advance. Lexis is one of our primary databases here at the Law Library, the other one being Lexis, the other one being Westlaw, excuse me. And we have several other databases as well, but these are the two primaries that have broad coverage and also have a lot of corollary in our printed materials. So I want to talk just a little bit in general about Lexis and about online legal databases, just to kind of give a refresher about what we have and what Lexis has. Of the two databases, both of them are excellent. Westlaw is probably a bit more prevalent than Lexis, though both are very prevalent, especially in the academic side. Both are in law schools, of course, but law firms and practitioners and law libraries use Westlaw and Lexis. We have both. We have Westlaw on 4 of our computers, Lexis on 3 of our computers. Obviously, with the current situation with COVID-19, our library is partially open, partially closed in a manner of speaking, and we've had to not turn on a few of our computers to facilitate social distancing. But 2 of our turned on computers have Lexis Advance, and I also have access to it through a separate password that we're granted. So I have access to it as well from my computer, and so does our law librarian. So we can do a lot of work on using it without having to take up one of the patron computers. Lexis has our subscription is very broad. We have the full panoply of Texas resources, and law is generally divided into 2 categories for purposes of I guess just describing them and what they are. One is primary resources and one is secondary resources. Primary resources is the law. That's statutes, case law, things of that nature, regulations. Though it's the pure law. Case law as well is a primary resource, and that's opinions by the courts of this country. And there's various levels of the courts. Obviously, we're very familiar with the U.S. Supreme Court. They have opinions. There's opinions written by the federal courts of appeals. There's sometimes opinions written by federal district courts. And their sort of precedence and importance of each of those, they work in relationship to each other. Texas and other states are the same way. State of Texas has a bifurcated highest court. The Texas Supreme Court is the highest civil court, handling civil matters such as personal injury and business cases and family law, probate cases, and so forth. And then there's the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, which handles as the highest court handling criminal cases. Then between the trial courts, some of which are here, obviously in Fort Bend County, and the highest courts are the courts of appeals. And those are regionalized courts in Texas. There's 14 of them, and they also issue opinions on legal issues when cases are appealed to them. So we have all those things are available on Lexis. We have the entirety of federal cases, the entirety of Texas cases. We also happen to have the entirety of every other state. So though it doesn't come up a lot, it doesn't cost us much more to get it, and so that's why we did. But sometimes it may come up that somebody needs case law from Georgia, or the statutes from Georgia, or Rhode Island, or California, or Oklahoma, and we have that. So we have the primary law on just about everything in the United States. Secondary law, that's the second category of things, and it's not law, secondary resources. And that's kind of everything else. And it's a lot of what we utilize here. Obviously, people need cases and statutes, especially attorneys, but everybody utilizes them. But then there's the secondary resources, and this is a lot of what we use with our pro se or self-represented patrons. And those are of several things. Those are treatises and practice guides, and those are invaluable resources about talking about the nuts and bolts and the details of the law, how you do things. And it's a way, I know when I'm dealing with pro se folks, it's a way that I am able to provide them information that tells them about a particular legal issue that they're dealing with. So let's say there's an issue of modification of family law orders. couple was divorced, they have children, and the divorce decree was entered, and we're a year or two down the road, and an issue has come up, and there needs to be supposedly a modification of that order. I can provide information. It's kind of lawyer level material, but it is information about the modification process. What are some of the steps and requirements and law that's going to impact that? So it's really a great way to be able to provide people information. And I provide that same information to lawyers. They need it too. There's a heck of a lot of stuff out there. Just one example of one of the primary resources, one of the secondary resources that we'll talk about that is offered on Lexis is called Arsenio's Texas Litigation Guide. And it's an extensive practice guide on all manner of civil litigation. And in book form here at the Law Library, it's 26 volumes of binders. It's thousands of pages. And all that's also available on Lexis. And so it talks about all manner of things. Similar thing in Lexis, they have a family law practice guide. So we'll talk a little bit more in detail about those coming up. But those are some of the secondary resources we have. Another example of a secondary resource is a form. We have forms covering many things. There's not a form for everything, but there's a heck of a lot of them. And so when people say I need a particular type of motion or petition or something else, then there's a good chance that we have it. And Lexis provides a wide range of those, and they're often come from those practice guides, some of them that I've already mentioned. Other things that are secondary resources are law review articles and journals and so forth. And these are articles written by lawyers and law students and other folks about issues in the law. So that's another secondary resource. And we have a pretty much the full complement of legal secondary resources available in this country. Texas, the Texas Bar Journal, the University of Texas Law Review, the University of Houston Law Review, the Texas Southern Law Review, all of those, and then many, many, many more, hundreds more. There's probably 50 journals associated with Texas alone. So those are sort of the dividing line between those two types of resources. We talked about secondary resources. With the other states, we don't really have them for the other states. Our subscription is sort of limited for the other states to the primary materials, but we do have secondary resources for the state of Texas, and that's most of what we deal with here. Our patrons, our lawyers, and our self-represented folks. So a big part of our budget, it goes to the maintenance of our collection, both in print and online. We spend thousands and thousands of dollars each year, and that's the main reason we're here, is to provide legal materials. So we provide a deep, for the size of the library we provide a really deep set of documents and books and so forth, both in print and online. Obviously, online it's a heck of a lot easier to store it. It takes up a lot of space, but what we do have in print is, I think, is very valuable, and I hope we never lose the print side. They complement each other. It's great to be able to do things online, but it's also good to be able to sit down with a book and look through it in that manner. Sometimes I know my brain works a little bit better sometimes in looking at something in book form than looking at it online. So it's a complementary thing. I think some of the younger people are pretty much more focused solely on the computers, and maybe some of the old timers are focused really solely on the books. I feel like when I practice law and here as well, I kind of look at it from both perspectives, and I see the good and value of both sides of it. Talking about ease of use, usability, Lexis, the online Lexis is great in that we can deliver the materials to you, to ourselves, and to our patrons in many formats. If you do come into the law library, you can download documents to a thumb drive. You can print them for 10 cents a page. I can email them to you, or you can email them to yourself if you're here, for free. So oftentimes, always really since I've been working at the law library, but obviously especially during these last few months when we've been essentially closed, our interaction, over the phone and online with people, and the ability to send them things. Somebody, calls up or sends me an email, or I meet them at the door. to talk with them, and they say, hey, I need some information in this regard, and I can take their email down and I can send it to them. I can send them the entire chapter from one of the family law guides on on modification. I can send them. Maybe it's a 50-page document, and I can send that to them, and it's something maybe 250 kilobytes, and I send it to them in Word format, and they have it. So it's just the interface is excellent and makes it easy and very user friendly. So it's pretty great thing. So let's talk a little bit about some of the nuts and bolts of Lexis Advance. I've kind of given my opening spiel. Let's talk some about utilizing this platform. And I'm on the Lexis Advance page that you can see. And, it's just like, I'm not going to say just like, but, using Lexis Advance or using Westlaw, you have a search bar. And it's kind of like Google. And, you type in what you need and they come up with the results. Lexis, has its way of presenting its results. And their search engines are updated and modified and modernized, and so that they're very effective, so that they bring back, what you search for is kind of what you get. I'm not saying it's perfect. Sometimes you got to dig a little deep. Maybe Lexis Advance's brain doesn't think the same as me sometimes, and what I'd maybe put first in my results, but it's excellent, really. So I'm going to show you how to use this a bit, and hopefully we will get back to normal someday and have folks coming back into the law library and using our resources in person. In the meantime, I'll be assisting you and Andrew and our other staff members, and I'm going to give you some information. I'm going to email you. I have a kind of little handout that I do when I've done this class in person, and I'll email it to you. And the last page provides some information on establishing a temporary Lexis account. In recognition of what's going on, Lexis and Westlaw as well have set up kind of temporary accounts for people. It's somewhat limited. It lasts for like 30 days, and the amount of documents you can download is somewhat limited, but it is something that can be used at home by you, and hopefully it supplements or adds to the help that we can provide during these circumstances. So let's look at Lexis Advance a little bit. Well, there's a couple of ways to start doing things. Sometimes people come in and they get on the Lexis page, and here's the search bar, and we can start searching. So I was noodling around a little bit, and this is kind of the example I usually use. It's called a motion for continuance. So that's what I'm going to use as sort of our tool to explore Lexis, and when you search for something, what are the results? What does it bring up for you, and then how do you access them? So a continuance. And I'm really kind of looking at it from the civil side of things, so I'm sure there's a corollary in the criminal cases. But say if you have a case set for trial, and say you filed a case in July of 2019, and maybe the case was set for trial, has been set for trial in August of 2020, and you're 30 or 40 days out, and you say, oh man, something's come up, or we need more time, or something like that. And so you need to ask the court for a continuance. Obviously, there's rules and law governing continuance of asking the court to delay the trial, whether it's for a relatively short period of time or a substantial amount of time. And there's legal reasons for doing so, and legal standards on how the court can address this motion. So you need to go to the court and ask for a continuance to continue the case to another date. So you can type in your search term, motion for continuance, and you choose, so you type that in there, and you can do things in various ways. This is kind of just a natural language search, motion for continuance. You can do things, you can put quotes around things like that to get only search for things that have that exact phrase in them. That's how you do that. There's things you can do to search called terms and connectors. So say if I wanted that exact phrase, and then I also only wanted stuff that said, and Texas. You can do terms and connectors to add that category to things. So that exact phrase with also anything brought up by Texas. Or maybe I'm looking to say I need motion for continuance, and I don't know, let's just say Fort Bend County. So I'm going to look for things to motion for continuance within the same paragraph as the term Fort Bend County. Maybe I'm looking for cases that expressly came out of, or exactly came out of Fort Bend County on this issue. So you do the slash, and then you say paragraph. So I want to find the term motion for continuance within the same paragraph as an exact term, Fort Bend County. You do that. Or I can change this to a sentence. I want to find it in the same sentence. So there's a lot of ways you can filter your own results or actually change your own search terms to get maybe more specifically defined things. I'm just gonna go back to my basic sort of natural language search term, motion for continuance, and I'm chosen a court. You can choose, I chose Texas, of course. I can choose federal stuff. I can choose as many of these as I want. Obviously, I'm more interested in things in relationship to Texas. That's mostly what we do here. But you can look in the federal system. You can look in every state. You can look in one particular state. So I'm going to choose Texas. I've chosen it, and I'm going to hit the search button over here on the right. And it's come up with, over here in the upper left, you see the results under particular types of categories. So it always lists cases at the top, but there's 9,721 cases that have been brought up. It's a big issue. It comes up a lot. Lawyers, like anybody else, sometimes procrastinate, and they get close to trial and they panic and they ask the court for a continuance. And so it's an issue that comes up pretty substantially, obviously. Obviously, it's not always about procrastination. There's a good reasons as well. So it brings up all these different types of results by category. Cases are listed first, then it lists statutes and legislation that have this search term in them. Secondary materials, the things we were talking about, such as the litigation guide, briefs, pleadings, and motions, previously filed things in other cases, forms. So probably the 3 or 4 primary ones you'd look at would be case law discussing the issue of motion for continuance, statutes and legislation, which would include the rules of procedure, which there is one governing that, or there's a few governing this issue. Secondary materials, like I said, maybe you want to look at practice guides that talk about the real world, how it actually goes down, what practice hints and pointers and information you need to know to kind of handle this type of legal issue, and forms. Those are probably the primary things you're going to want to look at if you're searching on motion for continuance. But let's go to so it's going to list the cases first. And so then you have cases listed, and you can sort them in various ways. Over here on the upper left where I'm circling, you can sort them in ways. So this is how Lexis has sorted them by relevance. They think, based on my search term, this is the most relevant cases, Villegas versus Carter. Maybe, maybe not. But and then it just gives a list by relevance and so forth. Or you can maybe choose by date, most recent. You can choose by court, things of that nature. So you can sort of filter your results or change your results based on different categories, based on what you want to look at. So let's just look at a case. We'll go to Villegas versus Carter. And this is a case from a few years back, but it's from the Supreme Court. It's about 35, 34 years old. It's still good law. These things here, these indicators here, various shapes and colors. It has a yellow triangle next to it. That just means caution. So there's been some, I don't want to get too much into detail about it, but I can, cases since then have maybe taken some issue with maybe the court's reasoning, something like that. And obviously, it's a relatively old case, and so maybe some things have changed since then. It's still a valid case, but there might not be the best case to cite anymore. So you need to look at some things possibly why there is a caution there. But other citing references have been positive in their analysis of the Supreme Court's opinion, and it's been cited 432 times in subsequent opinions by either the Supreme Court or the courts of appeals. So, and then you get into this, and then the cases are presented here. It gives the information about the case. It gives kind of a summary and so forth at the beginning. Let's see what they talked about. So that let's, you jump to the outcome. And this prefatory stuff here is not the law. This is the publisher's comments on it. They have a legal staff, they have attorneys that read through these opinions and come up with these overviews and so forth. But you don't get to the actual case until you scroll down. But you kind of get a hint of it here. Talking about the court held that the trial court abused its discretion when it allowed the petitioner's counsel to withdraw 2 days before trial and then also denied their motion for continuance to obtain new counsel. And that kind of goes to, this is my knowledge of motion for continuances, as I dealt with them many times in my career, is in general, the standard that the court is under in reviewing a motion for continuance or actually in judging a motion for continuance at the trial court level is abuse of discretion. So the court has a lot of discretion in their management of their court and the management of their docket and the moving of cases towards trial. And so generally a trial court's ruling is not going to be overturned unless it can be shown that in making their decision on the continuance, either to grant it or deny it, they abused their discretion, that they went outside the proper guidelines and so forth in doing so. So it's a pretty high burden you got to reach. The court kind of has to, kind of screw up to get into the abuse of discretion type thing. So you got these headers on particular types of topics within it. You can jump to it. It describes, each case kind of has some, main points of law that they discuss, and that's what these head notes describe. But it doesn't get down to the actual, what the court actually said until you get to the opinion side of things. And this is, this is the first word that the court said. So this is the law. This is an example of primary law. This case involves the trial court's discretion. So this is the trial court's opinion and so forth. So that's case law. And then other things, of course, are brought up by doing this type of search. So we also, let's say, want to look at statutes and legislation. And I kind of looked through here a little earlier just to, I always refresh myself a little bit before I teach a class and see what's new. And you hate to get into the middle of a class and look like you don't know what you're talking about. So, I would disagree maybe with how they categorize things as far as relevance goes, as far as what they've listed, because there's 601 items that were brought up by this type of search in these statutes and legislation. And for whatever reason, they see fit to list as the most relevant document something from Gregg County, some of their local rules about continuances. And then they have, Travis County's local rules about continuances and so forth. So it took going through a couple of pages, and you can refine your search to get to exactly what you want, but I used a, somewhat broad terminology. But it took a few pages to get to what I thought should be the number one item listed. Let me see if I can get there. I think it's page 3 of the results. But you'll see there's 61 pages of results. There's 10 items per page, so there's 600 plus items. So going on to page 3, let's see here, Rule 251. And this is, and we'll click on this. This is one of the rules from the Texas Rules of Civil Procedure, which are the statewide rules passed by the legislature that govern a lot of the procedures in civil courts, and so they're obviously key. They're key parts of your analysis of your motion for continuance and have a lot of relevance to bringing such a motion and the standards and so forth of how they'll be judged and that sort of thing. So Rule 251 is one of the rules. I go up here to the top, kind of working backwards. This is one of the rules. I'm going to go back to kind of the subchapter in the rules that covers continuance and change of venue, because there's a few more rules about it. This is these are the rules covering continuance. This is kind of the main one: application for continuance and continuance. But then there's some of the things that govern the courts. So attendance in the legislature. If your lawyer happens to also be a member of the legislature and they're in session, that's pretty much an automatic out for a continuance. It definitely will probably lead to the continuance having to be granted. Absence of counsel. If your lawyer is somehow gone, they're ill or some other reason, that's another one. So there's other good cause as well. I mean, application for continuance, I think it talks about, good cause shown, some of the standards that you're going to bring forward. I think generally continuances have to be sworn to, meaning you have to do kind of a little affidavit or verification of it, that the things you're stating in the application, the motion for continuance, are true. So bear that in mind as well. But it's just one example, not to get too deep into that topic, of the things that are brought up by a search on Lexis. Let's go back to some other categories then. So in addition to statutes and legislation, forms. Let's go. That's oftentimes what people are looking for. Hey, I need a form that I can utilize. And so here, and it's from one of the secondary resources, because within the Texas Litigation Guide, in addition to information, they have sample forms for things. So let's go look at the motion for continuance here that was brought up in the search term. It's a general form. And it just, it gives kind of a template. And it has to be, you would probably have to edit it. It gives various options and so forth. And you need to, if you use this form, you would have to make it case specific, go through it carefully, edit it and so forth. But it's a great way to start. It's why reinvent the wheel when you have kind of a standard form here that can be used and edited to fit your needs. And this takes us to another deal about how the user-friendly side of things. So I say, I want to use this form. So I can do a few things. I can email it to myself. I'm say, okay, I want to work on this later, so I'll email this to myself. And it defaults to me since I'm here on my account, but you type in your email address here on the and then you choose how you want it delivered to you. Most people probably use Microsoft Word, but you can send it in PDF form or WordPerfect, and then you hit submit, and it'll send it to you in Word format. Pretty handy, and it's free. There's other ways, there's other options, of course. If you were here at the law library and you say, well, I just want to start working on this thing right now, you can hit the download button, and you'd hit download, and it open the document in Word right here on the computer. I don't want to do that because it kind of messes up the screen sharing thing, and I'm not the expert yet at Zoom. So anyway, so there's just different ways of delivering it to yourself. Obviously, you can download it and also then save it to a thumb drive here as well. You can print it if you wanted to. Kind of more relevant if you maybe had the case that you wanted to print. Yeah, so there's just, and then let's look at secondary resources just to show the sort of final primary category of things that are brought out by that search. So a lot of secondary resources, and you just kind of have to scroll through and look for things. Here we have a motion for continuance, from the Texas Litigation Guide, and it's also where that form was, and there's law review articles talking about it. This looks like one of the main chapters from Arsenio's Texas Litigation Guide, so let's open up that one. And then this gives sort of information, this sort of where the rubber meets the road type of thing. Like I said, how does the real world work? I know I hear the rules and I see the forms and the statutes and cases, but let's just, how do I do this? And for a person who's unfamiliar with the law, I think these things are indispensable for lawyers as well. Lawyers, there's a lot of different things to know, and sometimes you might not deal with stuff on a regular basis. And so, it's valuable to read to give you the lay of the land on how things work. So, and there's, again, this thing, I could send you this document via email if need be. I do it every day. So let's go back and look at the main page. We only got about 7 or 8 minutes left. Let me just go back. Actually, so this shows you, if you want to just get back to the main page, you just go up here on the upper left-hand corner and hit the Lexis Advanced button, and we go to the home page, essentially. So then, in addition to searching for things, using the search terms, you can just maybe jump right in and go to some other different categories of things. You want to jump to statutes and legislation, which includes the Texas Rules of Civil Procedures in that. Or you want to go straight to the secondary materials. So let's go to the secondary materials, because I kind of want to introduce you, if you don't know already, to the secondary materials that are available. And Westlaw and Lexis are both excellent. And there's a lot of overlap in what they cover. Obviously, the cases and so forth, they're presented in their own particular formats. But where there's some differences, and where there's some differences is in the secondary resources. And I think Lexis, they acquired a company called Matthew Bender a number of years back. And Matthew Bender is the publisher, of books, who publishes things such as the Litigation Guide or the Family Law Practice and Procedure Manual here, or the Texas Estate Planning deal. So, and these are excellent in-depth resources that provide information and forms on just all these topics of the law. I had a gentleman come by yesterday, and he'd lost his case, and he was thinking about options after losing his case. And so there's some things you can maybe do, like file an appeal, things like that. So I provided him some information from the Texas Litigation Guide in that regard. Now, appeals, it's a broad topic, so I sort of put together some resources that provide him some good introductory information to appeals, so that he could weigh his options on what to do. And so I was able to send that to him. And so that's just kind of one example of things. So and not to ignore the criminal side of things, I've been concentrating on civil, but there's some excellent secondary resources that I send materials to lawyers, and lawyers use them here as well. Obviously, we have them in print mostly too. The Texas Criminal Lawyers Handbook, Texas Criminal Practice Guide, Texas Drunk Driving Law, Texas DWI manuals. This provides a lot of meat and potatoes information and forms on covering all manner of topics. I was sending some stuff yesterday to an attorney who comes in here regularly. He just needed some information about issues related to plea bargains and so forth. So I sent him some stuff on that. So let's just take a quick look at the Arsenio's Texas Litigation Guide. It's kind of the one I've mentioned a bit. Let's if I can get it to open. No, all right, it's not opening. Let's see. Let me go. I'll skip Arsenio's Texas Litigation Guide, and I'll go to one that I use quite a bit. I clicked on Texas Family Law Practice and Procedure. A lot of the people that we work with here on the pro se side, people representing themselves, it's family law. It's a big part of what goes on here at the courthouse. There's 3 courts and 6 judges, and that's all they deal with is family law. And it's often an ongoing thing. There's people here working on family law cases that, you look at the cause number, and it's, 10 years ago that they were granted a divorce, and they still come back from time to time to have to deal with stuff. Sometimes it's fine, but sometimes it's unfortunate circumstances, parties and people not treating each other well and messing with each other. So anyway, so this is I provide materials from this to people, and you can also look at the books and look at this on the computer as well. But there's just various subtopics or topics, and then there's sort of subtopics to these. So initiating action for dissolution of marriage. Now that's divorce. That's what the fancy name for divorce. So you expand the menu here, hit that plus, and it expands the menu to subcategories and subtopics in divorce. And so then you can expand on those. Drafting the petition, the SAPCR term, that SAPCR thing here, that's called suit affecting parent-child relationship. And that's just a general term that's used in relationship to any case that involves children. Divorce just between 2 people with no kids, that's not a suit affecting parent-child relationship. But a divorce where there's minor children involved, that is a suit affecting parent-child relationship. So then you expand this menu to look at things. And there's subcategories of things presented here under this topic. There's a practice guide. You expand that menu, and there's various topics to deal with and so forth. And you can open those up. You can send them to yourself using the email functions and such. Then there's forms. So they have petitions. And the petition is a document that starts the divorce lawsuit. And there's just, there's a sample petition, and there's various categories of things that can be added to the petition. So, like I said, that's just one subchapter in this extensive practice guide. Covers everything, post-divorce, enforcing the child support decree here, Objective J. That happens. People aren't doing what they're supposed to do in relationship to child support. And the parent who's entitled to receive child support has to come back to the court and, put their feet to the fire. So that's secondary resources. Let's go back to the main menu. We've just got a few minutes left. There's other stuff in here. I kind of tried to hit what I regard as the primary stuff, the most useful things. There's obviously some other things as well. There's a separate forms category. I usually go at seeking forms, just because I'm a little more familiar with it, by going to the secondary materials, looking for the particular topic, and then seeing what forms are in there. But you can also go straight to the forms as well. So you can look at things, by content. This is the content that Lexis Advanced provides. Also under secondary materials is the law reviews and journals side of things. And it's not the most used thing we have here, but they have their value for sure. Some of them are very valuable, but they put all the Texas ones up here for us. This is just how we have our page organized. So you can look, here's all the various journals, the Texas Bar Journal, which is a general kind of monthly magazine for members of the bar, the attorneys. But then you got the Texas A&M Law Review, which is not in College Station. Texas A&M affiliated a few years ago with what used to be called Texas Wesleyan Law School in Fort Worth, which is a law school that's only been around for about 30 or so years, but they affiliated with them a few years ago, so it's now called Texas A&M Law School, and it's in downtown Fort Worth. But then you have some other things, the Baylor Law Review, you have the Texas Law Review. So it's, those are just another example of a secondary resource. Let's go back to the main page again. And you can look through all the states. You can, for some reason you want the Kentucky Bar Journal, have at it. Well, I think that's kind of the main thing. Let me look at my notes a little bit just to make sure I haven't skipped anything that would be, I would think would be real important. But like I said, Lexis to me is just a fantastic resource. I use it every day. Honestly, I'm Westlaw I use every day as well. But if I had to pick one or the other between Lexis and Westlaw, I'd pick Lexis. They're both excellent, and we get good support from both of the people who work for Lexis and Westlaw. But if I had to choose, I would choose Lexis. So does anybody have any questions? You're welcome to ask them in the chat, or you're welcome to unmute if you want to. Please do. Let's see. Well, there being no questions, I appreciate y'all attending the class, and I'll send you my little handout that gives you a bit of information and gives you the info on signing up for the free Lexis trial and so forth. And it'll just give you some more information. And like I said, if you ever, I have my contact info too. So if you ever need anything from Lexis or anything else, just feel free to contact me. I'll be emailing you, so you'll have my email and my phone number and so forth. So thank you all for attending, and we'll see you at the next class. Thanks.